In 2006, an individual could, on average, visit 57 countries without a short-term visa. Today, that number has risen to 107. The most powerful passport in the world, which is from Singapore, gives you access to 192 countries without a visa. What about the most powerful African passports? How many countries, in your opinion, can you visit visa-free? And what is your take when it comes to international mobility? Welcome to Smart, Intellectual, Knowledgeable African. I'm Philip S.I.K.A. Before I engage deeper in this episode, let me invite you to click on the subscribe button if you're not yet a subscriber, and to also activate the ring bell so that you do not miss out on the latest episode. In the previous episode, I started discussing the international concept of passport strength. I stressed that one of the key factors explaining the huge gap between developed economies' passports versus African passports may be explained by economic and commercial performances. And in the previous episode, I promised to actually share with you the most powerful African passport in 2023. Well, there is actually no big surprise. While the strongest passport in the world gives you access to almost 200 countries, the strongest African passports only give you access to 155 destinations. And this is the S.I.K.A. passport. The second most powerful African passport gives you access to 148 countries, and it is the Mauritius passport. The third one is the passport from South Africa, which gives you access to 106 countries. The fourth and the fifth ones are respectively Botswana and Namibia, and they each give you access to 89 and 80 countries. The remainder of the list, out of the 54 countries on the entire continent, have an average of 40 to 50 destinations visa-free, which is quite low compared to the average international mobility of developed economies that actually stands at 170 countries. So, in this episode, I will continue making the same analysis, but I want to share with you my personal opinion on the concept of passport strength. I want you to understand that in my analysis, being granted or being branded as a strong or a powerful country in terms of international mobility follows, a specific set of rules. It is not something that is afforded based on random analysis or random criteria. And I'm going to continue discussing three other factors that contribute heavily to determine a country passport strength at the international level. So, in addition to the economic and commercial performances, you may actually think of the income factor. And the income factor is very important. Contrary to the economic and commercial factor, the income factor looks at the level of income, the state of income distribution and wealth distribution within a specific country. So, the higher your income level is, the more likely you are to actually have access to more countries in the world without the requirement of a visa application. And why is that? This is quite simple. It is because of the assumption that if you are coming from a richer country, you are less likely to become an economic burden for the host country. And this is very important. Nowadays, we are seeing a very different trend that is, noticeable in countries such as Argentina, Brazil, France, even in some advanced economies and emerging markets. National and local people want to enjoy their resources first. Whether we're talking about natural resources or economic resources, job employment, national people, the local population would like to be the first and the key beneficiaries of whatever wealth, income, and natural resources the country has. So, based on this new philosophy, based on this current assumption, it is very difficult for poor nation and for citizens originally from poor nation to be able to travel visa free to reach a destination, because they are not seen as visitors, they are not seen as economic contributors, but they are seen as expenditures. They are seen as an economic burden based on the assumption that because they are coming from less richer countries, they may actually need to benefit and enjoy also the economic prowess of the host country. And the income factor, as I am talking about it, is very important, because you will notice that even in Africa, when looking at the most powerful African passport in 2023, you'll see that the first countries I just mentioned are almost, if I might say, they are all actually, considered as upper middle income countries. Meaning that when you're looking at their income level ratio, they are actually falling within the categories where the gross national income index, the GNI, is comprised between $4,500 to $13,000, meaning that they are actually performing quite well in terms of income equality, wealth equality. Their citizens are considered, relatively well off, unlike some citizens from some other African nation. Therefore, at the international level, whenever the citizens are willing to travel to a destination, they are less likely to be seen as an economic burden to the host country. Another factor that contributes heavily in determining passport strength is the fragility indicator. The fragility indicator refers to how stable your country is, politically, economically, and socially. How likely your country is to be prone to wars, to internal turmoil, like to manifestation, to protesting, because at international level, like investors and international people need to know that you are a stable and a predictable player. Whenever moving into your country, people have a certain degree of safety. It is not a scenario where you may wake up traveling to a destination and then the following day you learn about a coup, or you learn about some putsch and some very uncomfortable situation. All these elements a capital impact in terms of determining whether or not your passport is going to be strong, in order to afford like the best international mobility to your citizens. And now I'm going to get back to the key point of this episode here. For some of us, for some intellectual people, especially some educated African, this situation is unfair to Africa because everyone should be afforded, the same possibility to wake up one day and to travel for whatever reason they want to, save that, they are no threat to the host country. And I may agree to that, but in my opinion, when it comes to global mobility or international mobility, we need to set our emotion aside and we need to remain practical. Like I said, passport strength is not something that is random. There are actually some pretty objective reasons why Singapore is the strongest passport in the world. There are also some objective reasons why EU nations and the United States and some other developed economies are actually at the top level in terms of global and international mobility. There's also a reason why, unfortunately, African countries are at the bottom of international mobility, because they do not meet these objective criteria. And in my opinion, everything, boils down to the economic and the income criteria. If you are going to travel to someone else's country, it is very critical that you doing so in order to becoming an asset to the host country, not a liability. Nobody likes liability, and that's a fact, even for nations. So when it comes to global mobility, the approach here is not to see passport strength or international mobility as a right. In my opinion, it is not a right that should be afforded to every citizen in the world, but it is more of a privilege. And there is a very strong difference between what is a privilege versus what is a right. A privilege here is a concept that is purely defined or designed to actually benefit a specific minority, save that minority meets the objective criteria. When it comes to rights are actually designed to serve the vast majority. And when it also comes to privilege, you need to meet some prior requirement. You need to make sure that whatever privilege you are creating, you are in a situation where you have the upper hand. And when we're looking at the current structure you know, of the global market, the international market, who have the upper hand in terms of economic growth, development, etc. The world, unfortunately, does not evolve based on emotions. It does not also evolve based on what should be right, what should be fair. There are some situations that unfortunately follow very practical, strong, and objective rules. And to actually back up my claim, let me give you a very concise and practical example of passport strength linked or attached to economic growth. 50 years ago, the United Arab Emirates had a passport strength of 50. I mean, when looking at how many countries their citizens could actually visit visa-free in the world, they were roughly at around 50 to 60 countries visa-free. Today, thanks to their economic prowess and their development, they can visit more or up to 173 countries in the world. And like I said, this performance is strongly linked to their economic prowess. The regulation and the initiatives that they've been able, to apply. How did they perform so well? It's because they worked. They put up the work, and they made sure that their economy, is becoming competitive, and their economy is now a key player at international level. There is no emotion involved here when it comes to why your citizen should be able to travel and visit more destinations. It is a matter of objectiveness. You need to put yourself in a position where you have the upper hand first. You also need to put yourself in a position where you are performing well, where you can guarantee, the minimum basic foundation, such as having a well-performing economic and commercial sector. You need to guarantee fair and good income distribution and wealth distribution among your citizens. You also need to guarantee that your country is a destination or a place where you can guarantee safety, at the maximum level to anyone willing to travel within your country. You also need, to make sure that whatever political system you're opting in is actually favoring your economic prowess. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I personally did. Thank you for listening to Smart, Intellectual, Knowledgeable African, the podcast where strong realities meet powerful perspectives. À bientôt.